Today, we're joined by Mr. Adam Van from Alpine Gold Exchange. We've got an exciting announcement about the new Goldback from South Dakota. We're going to walk through that, but we're also going to talk about precious metals in general and even some interesting developments happening right now in the silver market. Adam, welcome to Ron's Basement.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for having me again. I really appreciate it. And I like being on your show. Lots of fun stuff. So you received a package from us, I hope.
I did. Yes.
Nice.
One of my favorite packages of all time, I have to say.
That's fantastic. I'm glad you enjoy it. So we've got a brand new Goldback that's being released, a new state that's coming out, and that's the South Dakota Goldback. It's being released on September 19th. You can pre-order them right now at goldback.com or at goldback.com, but it also takes you to alpinegold.com. That's where you purchase them from, is alpinegold.com. And you can do pre-orders, and then we will ship them out by, well, we're already at the 18th. It happened pretty quick, but they're being released tomorrow. And you get to be the very first to review them on your show. So what do you think about them? Have you had a chance to look, or are you opening them up now?
I just opened them up, and I'm just taken back by their beauty. You were, very generous to send me one of each of these Goldbacks, and they're unique. And I can't say thank you enough, because they not only are they beautiful, but there's another important component to them, right? They have real gold in them. They are a store of value. I'll start here by just showing I'll start with the one Goldback, and you sent me a 1, a 5, a 10, a 25, and a 50. There we go.
And I'll explain that one just a little bit. This is the goddess of Pax, and she represents peace, and the pursuit of peace is what she represents. And it looks like that the dancer there in the middle is a Lakota tribe member that's doing the Circle of Life dance. And of course, you can see the bison and the mountains in the background. And on the bottom corner, you'll see the flower. That's the state flower. And I'll try to say this right. It's the American pasque flower, which is a purple flower that usually blooms before the snow melts. So that's why it's the state flower. Yeah. And then here we have the number 5. This is the 5 Goldback. And this is Industria. This is the goddess of Industria, and she represents hard work and perseverance, creativity. Many of the southwestern thing, or the midwestern rather. You guys are in the Midwest, right?
Yes.
And South Dakota's in the Midwest. So she represents a lot of the Midwestern values of hard work and perseverance. And then the number 10 Goldback, which is the goddess of Harmonia, and she represents harmony with life's challenges, because there's plenty of challenges in life, and she's the goddess of balance, is kind of what that stands for and represents. I'm trying to think.
These are just absolutely stunning, and there's something about, I'll repeat it because I can't say it enough. They're beautiful, and on top of that, they are metal. They're real money. It just, and the higher the denomination, they're all robust in feeling. But I wish that the viewer could feel this in their hand. This 25, and we'll get to the 50 next. But it feels like I have, and I not just feels like, but I have real money in my hand, and beautiful money.
Absolutely, and you'll notice. You can compare. That's the goddess of Laura, I think. I got a note here. Lorea is what that is, the goddess of Lorea, and she's the symbol of victory and knowledge, is what she symbolizes.
I'm impressed by your knowledge of all these goddesses. So there's obviously a goddess theme on the new South Dakota Goldbacks. That's
right? I think all the Goldbacks have goddesses on them. And then the one that is constantly being represented is the 50, and all of the 50s have the same goddess, and that is the goddess of Libertas, because that's what it's all about, is liberty and freedom. And so the goddess of Libertas is on all the 50s, and I think liberty being the most valuable asset that we have in America, I think it's fitting that it's on the most valuable Goldback. And so, yeah, you'll notice with the 50 and the 1, if you hold them both at the same time, you can really tell that you're getting quite a bit more gold from one to the other.
See if I can hold these up at the same time. Absolutely. It's
Man,
bigger. It's bigger, and the 1 is definitely robust, and you can feel, it's a solid piece for sure. But yes, the 50 absolutely feels heavier because it is, right? I mean, it's got does it have 50 times?
It does. It has 50 times more gold in it. And the way we like to trade these is that you can trade 50 of these for one of these. What do they call that? Numismatic or something like that? Where it's
numismatic,
where you can change them out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, you can change them out. So this one is worth about $4, and this one's worth about $200, and then we try to keep it so that the individual value per Goldback, you have 50 Goldbacks here, so you have 50 individual values inside that, and that's how we try to promote them and have them be distributed and spent.
So these will be official legal tender in South Dakota, or can be used officially as legal tender in South Dakota. Is that a safe assessment?
They are they're specie legal tender instrument. And so if you follow the UCC, which is amazing reading, if you ever want to really dive into something fun to read, you can read the UCC. And the UCC is what the Uniform Commercial Code is, what that is. And that is where legal tender and specie legal tender is noted in there. And that's what this is a specie legal tender, specie being gold. And then the legal tender is also gold, which is constitutionally protected. So we can definitely use it for barter and trade and spending and currency and all the like.
Interesting. I had a conversation with the CEO of Goldback not too long ago, and he talked about how there seems to be just a growing level of interest in this product from your side. You're in New Hampshire, if I have that correct. Are you seeing the same thing, that there's just increasing interest in the Goldback product?
Definitely in New Hampshire, we're getting a lot of interest in it. People like to trade and barter here anyway. We've got a lot of farmers markets. We've got a lot of homesteaders. So we have a homesteader law here, and you can actually homestead products from your home, baked goods, food products, packaged products, things that people sell at craft fairs and farmers markets and things like that, is perfectly legal to do inside your home. And that there's still rules that you have to follow, but it's not like you have to have a big manufacturing plant. So when you're trading with people on a local level like that, then you wind up having a lot of barter and a lot of trade involved anyway. So the person who provides pork chops is also providing, maybe trading with the person that does eggs, or the person that's bringing you vegetables, and the person that's bringing you fish, because we have a fish market here too. We have 13 miles of coast, and we have fishermen that go out every day and bring back fish every day, and they trade them down at the fish market. And so the Goldback, really, gold and silver and metals really come in handy when you need to trade value, and you need to trade something of real value to hold while you're waiting on a product that you do need. So maybe you've got plenty of eggs that day, so you can't trade fish for eggs, but you can definitely trade with gold and silver. And a lot of people do that in New Hampshire. A lot of people are trading gold and silver. We have silver mint. I guess they're not a mint. They're a smelter. What do you call a person who makes their own silver
refinery?
Yeah, we have refineries.
Or a mint. Yeah.
And they make their own silver pieces and things like that to trade.
If you're looking to buy gold, silver, or platinum, do yourself a favor and check out Pimbex, the online precious metals bullion dealer and sponsor of Ron's Basement. I was a happy customer before they offered to support the channel. you'll find they have the best prices, quality, and service. I think Pembex is best, and you will too. And be sure to tell them that you're from Ron's Basement.
It's interesting what you just brought up. A good friend of mine and fellow YouTube content creator, Bald Guy Money. I was having a conversation with him a few weeks ago. We were doing an interview together, and he was referring to silver, but this also applies equally to gold, and I think especially applies to the goldbacks. That you can think of these as batteries, and not from the perspective that they store electricity battery, but that they store work, they store value. And
That's
like
right.
you said, you can store, your value in that until you need to harvest it, until you need eggs, or until you need to do whatever you need to do with it in the interim. But it's a much more robust and reliable store of value, in my opinion, anyway, than, let's say, paper money. $100 bill versus a 50 goldback. I would go with the 50 goldback if I had to knew that I wasn't going to need value out of it for, let's say, 6 months or a year or even maybe 6 days.
That's right. And the dollar is what it is. The dollar is a note. It's a note for debt. So whenever you work for someone, they give you a paper dollar. That's a note of debt that you're owed. And then you can take that to someone else and you can trade that debt for goods and services. And that's fine for what it is, but it's a debt note and it's subject to inflation. So it has its place in the marketplace, but a store of value, the dollar is not. Stocks are a store of value. Other investment options are a store of value. Gold and silver are precious metal assets that are a store of value, and those are the ones that I like. But properties, vehicles, things like that are stores of value. If you were looking at the used car market in 2019, you wouldn't have thought that that was a store of value. But in 2021, all of a sudden, the used car market is a really great store of value because if you compare the used car against the dollar, the used cars are beating the dollar right now because the wealth is being preserved in the car, and the dollar is being inflated. And so many things are a store of value. What makes the goldbacks really a great store of value is it's so small. This is only about $4. So you can buy a carton of eggs, you can buy a cup of coffee, you can trade this simply and easily, and you get to carry it around in your wallet, and it looks really nice. It has a nice functional use to it. You can carry a lot of them, where with silver, I like silver too, but walking around with a pocket full of silver is kind of challenging sometimes. If you've got 25 silver pieces versus 25 of these that are nicely folded into your wallet, it's a lot easier to carry the goldbacks. So they have a functional purpose to them. And back to the asset part of it and the store of wealth, against the dollar, it seems as if, to me, I've changed my thinking lately to where the value of the gold is actually staying the same, because you're buying the gold and you're putting your wealth into the gold, and you're building it. You're building it up over time. Metals in general, you are. And then the dollar value of the gold goes up, but that's not really because the value of the gold is going up. That's because the value of the dollar is going down. So when you see gold going down in price, that just means that the dollar did a little bit better that month. But over time, we've seen for the last 100 years, over time, dollar is subject to inflation and gold and silver is not. So it's a better store of value, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And that can be, I think, a bit of a difficult concept for any of us that were maybe born and raised in a Western country to grasp the fact that, you aren't measuring gold in dollars. Maybe you're measuring dollars in gold. And I even heard someone put forth the argument regarding the gold standard. I like to say that the world's never gone off the gold standard, the silver standard. It's always, Nixon temporarily took us off the gold standard, but at the end of the day, the world is still on the gold standard. And one of my guests brought up a great point, and he said, yeah, as long as in America you're still able to convert your paper dollars for gold, the argument can be made that, gold is still the base. Gold and silver, like John Exter, who was an ex-Federal Reserve economist, wrote many times with Exter's pyramid. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but gold and silver are the base of the monetary system. And you can measure it in dollars, but at the end of the day, it still is the foundation upon which everything rests.
And I think it really is. And if you want to see any proof of that or evidence of that, just look at what the central bankers have been doing for the last 5 or 6 years. They've been buying as much gold and silver as they can. So they know the value of it, and they know that their wealth is going to be stored in that value. And they know that you're not going to have a bank that collapses if you've got a vault full of gold and silver. No. So you'll be in good shape.
And I want to interject as well, as it goes with your point. Not only have the central banks been buying gold, but they've also been repatriating gold. Countries all over the world have been requesting, and that's been going on for maybe the last 5-10 years, but it's even picked up a little bit lately, where you've got countries saying, we don't want to store our gold in New York or London. We want our gold now in our country. They're going back to the old, which Goldback achieves this as well. If you don't hold it, you don't own it, type mentality. And it's important to note that not only central banks have been acquiring gold, but the Bank for International Settlements, the BIS, which is the central bank of the central banks, they changed the reserve status of gold to a tier 1 asset a few years back, meaning that's the highest level for physical gold. That if a bank owns physical gold, they basically can, that's considered now a tier 1 asset. So, it seems that all over the world we're seeing a renewed interest in gold as a store of value.
I think so. And I think there's more to come too. So you like the silver markets pretty heavy. What do you think about what's going on in Shanghai over in China right now with the silver markets? What's your opinion there?
That's interesting. I'm not a guru or an expert, but I tell my viewers and those that are joining us right now, there's 2 new acronyms that we need to remember: SGE, the Shanghai Gold Exchange, and the SFE, the Shanghai Futures Exchange, because in the last couple of weeks we've seen a difference in price on both of those markets, which was significantly higher than what silver and gold were trading for in New York and London. I think with silver, it got as high as 12 or 13%. Silver was trading around $25 when it was trading in Shanghai, when it was trading for like 22, 23 in the Western markets. So it's an interesting dynamic. And another thing I'll throw in, and then I'll get your thoughts on that as well, Adam, is one of the big differences is their markets, the Shanghai Gold Exchange, is much more based upon physical. There's not this crazy leverage that I'm sure everybody's heard about it, like we have at the COMEX, where there's somewhere between 30 and 300 contracts written on each 1 ounce of metal that they actually have in their vault.
Man, you know so much more about it than I do. Boy, you outplayed me.
Okay.
So I was just looking at the silver markets because they had turned over the weekend. I liked what I was seeing on it from Shanghai on Friday. I like to pay attention to what Shanghai is doing at 9:30 at night the next day, and it's kind of a tell on what our markets are going to do the next day. So I noticed that the silver and precious metals, but particularly silver, had started picking up in Shanghai Thursday night at 9:30, and then by the time the markets opened here, it had opened at about 1.7% higher than it was the Thursday previous. And I think it's going to happen the same thing today. The markets are going to open in about 15 minutes, and judging from what silver was being sold for at 9:30 last night, I think we're going to have a nice, exciting week this week for silver. And I think right now silver has hit its bottom. It's been dropping, but it went kind of crazy back in March and shot way up with really high premiums. And I think we were due for a correction because the the market was hysterical for about 5 or 6 weeks. And so I think it came down nice and slow. And now we're getting ready to go into the fourth quarter. Q4 is coming up. We're getting ready to have a whole bunch of banking profits and earnings reports that are going to be coming out at the end of September. And I don't think those reports are going to be very good for the banks. And so I expect the fourth quarter to be very exciting with silver, and it's really going to start picking up. And if Shanghai is any indication, if it's the canary, then it's indicating that we've hit the bottom now and it's going to start turning back up, is what my prediction is. But that was my take on it. You were much more well read on that and know way more than I do.
No, that's a great insight. It's very interesting. You know, the Goldback obviously is a gold-based product. It's also important to note with the Chinese, you know, China is the #1 producer of gold in the world. They're also the biggest buyer of external gold in the world. And there was also a big, almost 6%. I think at one point last week, gold was trading, when gold was trading for like $1,912 in the US, it was trading for like 2020 and higher in Shanghai. So, you know, and I think we can't underestimate the importance of the fact that the Shanghai Gold Exchange is a much more physical market. You know, the COMEX and the LBMA are leveraged derivative markets essentially, whereas that market in Shanghai now. And when it comes to silver, I'm sorry I'm rambling on here, but another interesting thing to consider with silver in China is it's a much more physical market, but from an industrial perspective, they have much much huger, more robust demand for physical silver as well. And they've been very vocal, the Chinese, about the fact that they think the silver price is too low and how critical of a metal it is, not only from a precious metals perspective, store of value perspective, but even more importantly for them to a certain degree is to be used in the manufacturing process. So
yeah, and I wonder what the manufacturing rhythm is in China. I'm not familiar with, you know, what their downtimes are. You know, they have kind of a moving new year. It's somewhere between, I think, February and April or something. Their new year moves with their calendar in relation to ours. So I wonder when they start a Chinese New Year, if that affects their manufacturing rhythms. And I wonder, now I'm interested to know what those rhythms are, because once the manufacturing kicks up, that's whenever the silver is going to kick up, and it's going to become more exciting.
Yeah, it's you know, many analysts that follow this very closely have talked about the fact that both the silver and the gold markets are experiencing right now a tremendous period of change where they call it price discovery. The price discovery mechanism appears to be shifting more toward the Eastern countries. You know, not to get into a big geopolitical conversation, but we have what's going on with the BRICS countries and now the BRICS Plus with 6 more countries joining them. Those countries are, you know, are massive from a population perspective, from an economic perspective, and from a economic growth perspective. With, you know, we're here in the United States, we've seen kind of a strain put on our middle class, while China and India, which combined have 2.8 billion people in their country, right? Like 9 times what we have in the US. And they have expanding economies and they have growing middle classes. And Adam, on top of that, both Chinese and Indian cultures they're crazy about silver and gold. So it's a real interesting time, you know, to be owning things like goldbacks when it comes to store of value. There's this whole move throughout the world to de-dollarize. It's just a very exciting, very interesting time. And you know, to get back to these beautiful South Dakota Goldbacks, I mean, they are a store of value, and that metal that is in there is valued throughout the world. I think in the United States, we, it's like the inverse or the opposite here as opposed to India or China. I talk to people that were born in India. I have a lot I run into. I have a little job I do at night, or you talk to Chinese people and ask them, people that have lived in that country, how are gold and silver perceived, and they'll tell you that it's like the opposite of what it is here. Everybody buys gold and silver, and that seems to be the trend, where a lot of let's say geopolitical power is shifting right now, and economic power. So I'm sorry, I've gone down a long rabbit hole, but it's a very interesting time here in which we live.
No, you raise an interesting point and a great point to talk about.
First Mining Gold is a development company advancing two of the largest gold projects in Canada, Springpole in Ontario and Duparquet located in Quebec. Each already has 5 million ounces of gold reserves, but exploration initiatives are underway at both projects to find even more gold. First Mining is well-financed, has zero debt, and owns an interest in 4 additional Canadian gold development projects.
Over in different cultures, they think about gold differently than we do here in America. There is a coffee shop right around the corner here. It's William and Sons Coffee. If you ever visit Manchester, you have to go to William and Sons Coffee because it's just absolutely the best. The gentleman, John, there that owns and manages the place, he actually visits the farms in Brazil and the different areas where he buys the coffee beans, and they ship him the coffee beans green. So he's not getting them secondhand. He's not buying them from any distributor. He's buying them from the farmers, and it's just off the hook. And him being a world traveler, whenever I first started going there, first off, the coffee's phenomenal. So I started going there every day. I have a habit where I pull my wallet out, and the first thing I do is I open my wallet, and you can see the Goldbacks right on the side. So my very first question is, do you accept gold? Like, can I pay with gold? And this gentleman had never seen Goldback or anything. And so he looked at that, and he looked back at me, and he says, "You're going to pay me gold for coffee?" And I said, "Yes, sir, if you'll take it." And he says, "I can make a lot of coffee." So, but he came from a culture in Brazil and he's a world traveler, and they treat gold and silver totally different in other cultures. So for him, it was an easy answer. It was an easy yes. If you're going to pay me gold for coffee, I'm going to make you as much coffee as you have for gold. And I've seen that again with people from Pakistan and other parts of Europe where they're used to seeing gold. They're used to seeing it. They're used to transacting in it. And whenever I show them a Goldback, about the only thing that they want to talk about is how nifty it is, how thin it is. They want to talk about the manufacturing process, but I don't have to sell them on gold and silver. I'm just showing them the Goldback, and I'm just showing them what we have, and they're more interested in how it's made and things like that. And they're very easy to sell on because they know the value of those precious metals. So what you're saying about India and China, they're used to seeing these things, and so their culture is a lot different, and it's much more widely accepted, I think.
Yeah. Gold and silver have been valuable. You know this, I know this, and the person joining us right now knows this, but it's worth repeating. Have been valuable for thousands of years, and not just for thousands of years, but everywhere on the globe. I'm looking up my grandpa's old globe up behind my camera, and anywhere on that planet during any time in the last thousands of years, gold and silver have been valuable. And I think that that in America, there was when Nixon took us off the gold standard in 71, there was a concerted effort to, at that point, they divorced the dollar from gold, and there was a concerted effort to, let's say, dissuade Americans away from owning physical gold and silver. And we can't forget that, prior to that, from 1933, when Roosevelt confiscated everybody's gold and made it illegal. So from 1933 through 1974, it was illegal to own gold in this country. So we've had almost 100 years now of either gold being illegal, which it was at one point, to then being shifted to, let's just say, uh, uh, people were discouraged from buying. So I mean, in the mainstream financial services industry in this country doesn't sell silver and gold, right? They sell stocks and bonds and things that they can make commissions on. So we have a culture here where parents and grandparents aren't teaching their kids about the value of silver and gold, but there seems to be an awakening. And it also, I think, is very important to point out that what we're doing is what our founding fathers wrote into the Constitution. You know, you're familiar with the number of states around the United States that on an individual state by state basis are, you know, passing legislation based on the Constitution to allow their citizens to use gold and silver as legal tender. So it's an interesting time on many levels in which we're living right now.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and those states are growing. There were some House representatives that filed a few bills. I think one bill in particular last week to make gold and silver more widely accepted by the state in New Hampshire. Now we'll have to see how that goes. It's an awkward thing with politics. You have to submit a bill and then you don't get to talk about it until February. So I don't know how any of that stuff works, but apparently they've submitted it and then they're going to start talking about it in February. So a lot of states are doing that, though. A lot of states are really pulling back, dialing back their money situation, really thinking about it, thinking about how they're going to manage their local economies.
Well, and you know, I like to point this out to the viewers as well. If you think about the big picture of what's going on with gold, with goldbacks, with silver, maybe people are silver stackers. In the United States, you've got a growing number of people who are buying silver and gold. Okay, and then if you zoom out on a state by state basis, you've got a growing number of states that are moving forward with this legislation. Tennessee, you probably know the list better than me. I know we're trying here in Missouri, Kansas passed. There's just a growing number of states that are protecting their citizens' right, constitutional right. And then if you zoom out on a national basis, obviously on a national federal basis, there's nothing going on with gold and silver. But if you zoom out one level further to the world, and I'll just end with this last point, you know, if you look at the 5 biggest economies in the world, at the top you have the United States, but close behind in number 2 you have China. We already talked about how the Chinese value gold, right? The world's biggest producer, the world's biggest importer. We know how the Chinese feel about gold. In number 3, you have Japan, and we could go on for another half hour talking about how right now in Japan there is a gold frenzy going on because the yen is dropping in value. And Japanese citizens I'd encourage anyone listening, go into Google and write Japanese gold buying. There's a gold frenzy going on in Japan, and Japan is a huge, huge economy. And I may have mixed up number 3 and number 4, but that doesn't really matter because we're going to say number 4 is Germany. Germans love gold and silver. They have it's part of their culture. A lot of that has to do with past hyperinflations, the Weimar, all that whole situation. And number 5 is India, and nobody compares to India when it comes to love of precious metals. Indian households have 25,000 metric tons, just their households alone,
wow,
which is three times what we have at Fort Knox. So the world of precious metals, I don't know. And when you look at the countries that are growing, to me, the trend seems to indicate that I'm not saying people are going to get rich by buying gold and silver, but this is what I like. Then I promise, Adam, I promise I will be quiet. But what I like about silver and gold is that when I look at it, is there a chance that it could go down in real value? I think very minimal chance that in terms of real value that it could go down. Is there a chance that it will maintain its value? I say the probability of that in terms of maintaining real value, right? That an ounce of gold will continue to buy me a fine suit of clothes 50 years ago, just like it has for the last 2,000 years. Absolutely. And that there's a chance, depending on how situations play out in the future, that it could offer some significant real value appreciation as we head into these next 10 years. Because when I look at the big picture, you know, we won't even go into the financial situation in the United States. I see a scenario where the metals will continue to perform well.
Yes, and I'm going to have to wrap it up too, because I'm going to have to open the store soon. But to what you're saying about gold is going to hold its value. So the biggest argument I have for gold, or that I've heard for gold and how it's going to drop in value, is that there's a comet in outer space that people are thinking about mining, and that would destroy the gold market. So right now we have a dollar that falls every time some rich man sends a tweet. And the best argument you have for gold is a comet in outer space that's going to crash the gold market. I'll stick with gold. I'll take my chances with the comet.
I don't know. Maybe you need to go put your spacesuit on. That's what you're up to.
Go.
I'm not sure. Thank you. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ron. I really appreciate being on your show. I'll just tell your listeners one more time that they can go to alpinegold.com and they can pick up their South Dakota Goldbacks. We're going to start shipping them on the 19th, and they can get in line early. I don't know when this episode's gonna air, but go to alpinegold.com and get your South Dakota Goldbacks. We're starting to ship them right now.
Thanks, Adam. We'll see you soon.
Take care, my friend.